Have you ever wondered if there's a way out of the paycheck to paycheck cycle? Well, today that's what we're going to talk about. I find that the best source of information for things like this is the oldest book on the planet that talks about financial principles, and that is the Bible. So I'm going to say this is my opinion, that in the Bible, God gives us two major points on wealth creation. The first is the family business, that the young people in the family are doing something the family has been doing for generations, not going to college to learn something no one in the family's ever done. That's the first principle, the idea of the family business. And the second one is the idea of leverage. You've probably heard me talk about both of these points, but the idea of leverage, the best place to look is in the parable of the talents. And we call it financial leverage today, but basically what it is it's earning a little off the efforts of many other people. For example, in this parable, the landowner owned a lot of land, way more than he could sow in 8 hours a day of his own time. So he paid a fair wage to maybe thousands of people to go out and sow the seeds in his land for him. And then as it came up, he paid them a salary out of it, but he earned a profit off of all their work. That's financial leverage. First thing I kind of want to show you right now is there's this great book written by Kiyosaki called the Cashflow Quadrant. I think it's the best book he ever wrote. He's famous for Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But the Cashflow Quadrant, if you hadn't read it, try to pick that book up. Because here's the gist of that book. He pictured it as 4 squares, making 4 quadrants. And he talks about those different forms of businesses. Now, the first one is called the employee, all right? The second one is called self-employed, like you own the business, right? The third one at the top right is called a business owner. And the fourth one is called an investor. Now, as he goes down through those quadrants, he talks about the pros and cons of each one. What about employee? Well, in that quadrant, you are actually being leveraged, okay? Because you're the employee and you're trading your infinitely valuable time for a little bit of someone else's money. And that's the employee, that's the paycheck. Now, why do people do that? Well, they think it's more secure. But when you go through things like COVID and thousands of businesses are laying off hundreds of thousands of people, you start to find out that paycheck is not always secure. So you're kind of thinking you're getting security, but you're giving up a lot of things to get that security, such as time freedom, such as wealth creation, where you're trading your infinitely valuable time for a little bit of someone's money. You'll never create wealth that way, in my opinion, in Kiyosaki's opinion, and in God's opinion, because he wrote it that way in the scripture. And the parable of the talent is where we see this. Now, the second quadrant is the self-employed quadrant. And this is one where people are tricked. They think if I can just own my own business, I'm going to be fine. And especially if I could find a way to do what I love to do and make money doing it, I'll be a millionaire. And both of those are pretty well fallible, okay? And I'll show you why. Let's take Italy for an example. It's said that when you go to Italy, 85% of the businesses are family owned. That sounds really good, isn't it? But most of them are restaurants, and they're fantastic. I mean, every block's got 4 of them at least, and they're all good. You can't find a bad one, really. But the problem is, if that family business owner is not in that restaurant, then it goes down. He's got to be there working every day. So in a way, he's trading his hours for money again, because if he leaves, the business fails. So now the business owns him. He doesn't own the business controls the person. So anytime you start a business where you're the sole proprietor and you just have to be there, it doesn't work. That is not the best kind of business to be in. All right, so now the next quadrant up on the top right, if you were looking in his book, the way he draws it, is called the business owner. And by that, I mean, obviously you own the other business too, but by that, what he means is you're a business owner who has at least learned 2 key components of business management. And they are this: duplicating yourself in people and then delegating to them. So you duplicate yourself in your people, in your staff. You teach them everything you know about that business and how to do it, and then you let them do it, and then you go and start another one. That way you get a little bit of leverage, because you're teaching people how to do what you do, and you're trusting them to do it. You're not micromanaging, you're delegating, and you can build a pretty good business that way. And so now we're at the last one, the bottom right, and it's the one that can change your life. It is the best quadrant, no doubt about it. and the Bible teaches it too. I mean, there's your authority, right? And the investment quadrant is where you want to be. Now, basically 2 forms that the world talks about. One is real estate, right? And the other is stocks and bonds. Wouldn't you agree? Real estate and the stock market. And you can put pretty much everything in those 2 categories. And so what I'd like to do is get you to think about this. When you become a person who's in that investment quadrant, now, instead of you trading your time, which has infinite value, for a little bit of someone else's money, or even rather than you trading your time to run a business that you got to be at every day, or even better than training people and duplicating, building something huge, but you still have payroll, you still have enormous accounting problems, you still have warehousing problems, you still have all of those problems. When you get down into that investment component, all of a sudden you've got your money making the money, and that's what we're going to talk about next time. It's been great being with you today, and if you want to learn more, check out the links in the description below.